become fearless, you have to repeatedly put yourself in stressful situations. You have to cultivate a kind of disposition towards your comfort zone where you are repeatedly striving to extend it. And you can only extend it by pushing it, by noticing when fear arises within your experience and cultivating the habit of looking at it and not veering away from it. It's a kind of intuitive reaction for us to look away from fear, for us to retreat from it, because it's a very aversive thing when it arises in our experience. It signals really the boundary of what is safe and comfortable and familiar to us. But it is also only through pushing and exploring into this area beyond our comfort zone where we find the true seeds and fruits of growth. Growth is never attained when you reside purely in what is safe and familiar. This is really the essence of the hero's journey, which I've talked about in my previous sort of videos. The hero's journey is one of leaving the safety and sanctity of one's home, of one's comfort, and seriously exploring the unknown, seriously exploring this sort of field of potentiality which does lie within it, risks and threats and danger. There is something very deep and primal, I think, within us where we are sort of attracted to that unknown. We're attracted to that field of chaos and darkness, and we want to engage with it for the dream and the objective of learning and attaining a kind of internal transformation from engaging with this stressful field of danger. We atrophy as individuals when we reject this sort of call to adventure, when we sort of remain stagnant in our sort of our sort of familiar world of comforts and safety. This residing in comfort and safety, it may lead to a kind of short-term fulfillment, but it doesn't satiate this deep drive that I think a lot of us have, this sort of deep drive towards adventure, towards challenge, towards truly actualizing oneself. And you can only actualize oneself if you lean into your fear. And I think you'll find that fear as an emotion, it won't ever really truly go away. What really happens when you lean into your fears is that the sort of the field, the surface area of what you are capable of doing, it expands. So the things that will conjure up fear seem to sort of go higher and higher. Things which may have previously brought you fear and anxiety and apprehension, they'll become much more comfortable as a result. And you'll be able to do that effortlessly and without sort of fear. Instead, the things that will sort of grant you, true fear and anxiety, they'll be bigger, greater, and more challenging things. It's this kind of this endless progression of pushing the boundaries. And that's why I think that fear is a kind of emotion that arises and elucidates and represents your current boundaries at this moment in time. And it's because of that, it carries very important information, I think. And I think if you can sort of cultivate this sort of attitude of being able to sit with your fears, to understand what they are, to understand the nature, the causes of them, in that sort of action of self-understanding, you come to learn about very deep aspects of yourself, about the things that truly worry and give you anxiety, which, this is a very important piece of shadow work, I suppose, because we often are conditioned to repress and ignore and push down our kind of fears because it's comfortable, because it's easy to do in the moment. It's easier to look away from fear and to retreat. But if we can, to tease out what those things are, what are those things that are holding us back, what are those things that are worrying us, if we can tease it out and look at it, in that action we can then come to understand it, and we can then, through understanding it, come to overcome and transcend it and move through it. And as you go through that sort of motion, that authentic motion of pushing through fear into challenge and achieving through that action, there is a real deep sense of fulfillment and contentment that comes from that motion. I think it's one of the most fulfilling things, I think, to truly challenge yourself. And of course, when you truly challenge yourself, you open yourself up to the opportunity of failure. And failure is a very important thing, and it's a necessary aspect of all of our life's journeys. If we just succeeded every time, there would be no room or opportunity for learning. Failure is a very necessary aspect of learning, and we can reframe really our failures when we sort of seriously think about this. When we fail and make mistakes, we can look at them as opportunities for realigning and understanding the nature of why we failed, and then how we can sort of transcend that failure. So failures aren't really bad, they are really just opportunities when you sort of seriously look at them. And if we don't learn from our failures, we will continue to make the same mistakes over and over again, stuck in these sort of loops. And we make these sort of mistakes when we don't seriously look at why we're making those mistakes, when we don't seriously integrate the lessons of what is happening. And often that comes from this sort of disposition of not looking at our fears, this sort of disposition of wanting to remain in comfort and not seriously look at the things that we are repressing. But I think we're all capable of looking at our repressed material. We're all capable of introspection. All you have to do is simply sit in silence and look at what arises. Sitting in silence is a deep way of reconnecting with your psyche. And you'll find it's a very meditative act, of course. And you'll find as you sort of try to sit in silence, your nattering monkey mind will arise, conjuring all sorts of ideas and images of what you should be doing, how boring this kind of thing is. But that's the work of looking into your psyche, looking into the patterns of your psyche. And it's only through the sort of this meditative motion of bringing your awareness, your attention to yourself, that you are able to look into your patterns. And you can conjure up a meditative intention to think about what are my fears. And that will trigger a kind of a conscious motion of free association, where you'll start to conjure up thoughts of what are your sort of typical fears. And as your thoughts sort of represent up something that you are worried about, that you're maybe procrastinating, it'll be uncomfortable. But in that motion, you will have the opportunity to look at it. And you can only understand and transcend something if you first look at it, if you first become aware of it. And, this is the nature of shadow work, as I've sort of talked about. And shadow work, I think a critical component of that is the true introspection into one's fears, into the things that really arrest you and trigger your sort of ancestral stress response that make you feel tight and sick. But, it's think we should accept that we have these sorts of things. We shouldn't turn ourselves away from it. We have to accept it. And through that acceptance, we can then choose to work through it. And it is a work, you know, it's a difficult work, a very difficult work. I'm under no illusions. You know, it's perhaps one of the most difficult things that we can do, but it is also one of the most nourishing things we can do to truly work through our fears. But hope that's been interesting. Like and subscribe, all that jazz. Enjoy the rest of your day.